What if Thailand's most powerful love story wasn't straight? Newyear Kitiwhut broke every rule. He didn't just fall in love with another boy, he stayed. For 12 years, in a country still learning to accept same-sex love, he lived it, loud, soft, and unapologetically. This isn't a scandal, this is the realest love story you've never heard, and once you do, you won't forget it. In 1995, in the warm chaos of Bangkok's backstreets, a boy named Kitiwhut entered the world. Not with noise, but with stillness. The world would come to know him as Newyear. But before he had a name that echoed on fan pages, he was simply a boy raised in a house where love spoke softly. His parents were schoolteachers, humble, thoughtful, and endlessly patient. Their home wasn't rich in space or money, but it overflowed with stories. Over dinners lit by ceiling fans and surrounded by the scent of jasmine rice, they talked about everything. History, dreams, heartbreak, and hope. In that little space, Newyear grew up learning that being real mattered more than being impressive. He was never the loudest kid on the block. While others chased soccer balls and scraped knees, Newyear sat nearby sketching the clouds or humming along to the city's rhythm. A bird call, a sigh from his mother, the silence before a thunderstorm, he caught all of it like a net catches wind. His parents didn't scold him for being sensitive, they praised it. He notices what the world forgets, his mother said. He hears what we miss, his father added. Long before he found a stage, Newyear had already learned how to listen with his whole heart. By primary school, two things became clear. Newyear was brilliant, and he had gravity. Kids circled around him, not because he was loud, but because he was present. He didn't seek attention. He earned it by asking the kinds of questions that stopped grown-ups in their tracks. One day, fate handed him a microphone. The regular announcer was out sick, and the principal pointed to him. "Kitiwhut, you try." What happened next wasn't flashy, it was magic. His voice, calm but captivating, washed over the crowd like a breeze in temple bells. Nobody expected a soft-spoken kid to make a whole school lean forward. From that morning on, microphones followed him. He became the go-to host for every school event, debates, dances, even the New Year festival. He wasn't just speaking, he was shaping silence, letting pauses land like poetry. But behind the smooth delivery was a quieter world. He kept notebooks full of drawings, heroes with hidden pain, faces caught mid-thought, dreams no one had asked him to share. While his classmates debated the hottest Thai boy band, Newyear drew emotions with pencil and ink, like he was searching for a world where every kind of love was safe to name. By high school, his voice had become legend. Teachers didn't ask if he'd speak, they asked when. Students fought to have him MC. He was still the quiet kid who loved soft moments, but when he stood at a podium, it felt like the room held its breath. He didn't just tell stories, he made them feel like yours. That rare gift of turning crowds into companions gave him influence beyond his years. And yet, under all the praise, a quiet ache lingered. He was seen but not fully known, applauded but not entirely understood. Who would ever read the stories he hadn't yet told? The ones written in the margins, drawn in shadows, waiting. He had a voice for the world, but he still longed for a heart that saw him not as the perfect host, but as the boy with too many sketches and too few places to set them down. What he didn't know yet, what none of us knew, was that his moment was coming. And love was about to arrive, not as a performance, but as a mirror. By senior year, Newyear wasn't just another student. He was the face of the campus. If a mic showed up, so did he. But what drew people in wasn't polish, it was presence. He didn't speak at crowds, he spoke to them. Whether reading morning announcements or hosting school events, his voice felt less like a script and more like a song you didn't know you'd been waiting to hear. Teachers trusted him, students looked up to him. And somewhere between the applause and the quiet walks home, Newyear realized he didn't just enjoy the stage, he belonged to it. That presence didn't fade after graduation. It grew. He enrolled at Chulalongkorn University, Thailand's most prestigious school, and juggled lectures on psychology with scripts, shoots, and spotlights. By day, he decoded human emotion, By night, he embodied it, on screen, on stage, and in every smile he gave fans between classes. While others faded into the background of campus life, Newyear became part of its rhythm. He wasn't just a student with a side hustle. He was a rising public figure managing two worlds, academia and celebrity, with grace far beyond his years. He started small, commercials, guest shows, campus shoots, but he never shrank into the background. He didn't need to be loud. He just needed to be real. Calm, sincere, and quietly magnetic, Newyear had a way of making space feel safe. The fashion world caught on fast. His soft grace, paired with a gaze that felt like listening, turned heads. Suddenly, the kid with sketchbooks was fronting editorials and walking runways, not because he shouted, but because he glowed. He wasn't trying to impress. He just showed up as himself, and that was enough. Then came TV. His first role was in Shortcut to Your Dream, 2012, a blink and you miss it part, but he kept going. In I Am Your King, 2017, he played Pound, a gentle presence in a queer youth drama. Then in Top Secret Together, 2021, he played himself, and audiences finally saw who he really was. Warm, witty, unafraid. Saneha Stories 4, 2022, followed, revealing even deeper layers. He brought honesty to every character, not by acting louder, but by listening harder. He didn't disappear into his roles adapted to him. That's what made them believable. That's what made him unforgettable. And so did the audience. Quiet boys saw themselves in him. Sensitive teens, awkward dreamers, the ones too soft for this loud world, they found a mirror in Newyear. But he never let success turn into distance. He still replied to fans, still thanked crew members by name, still smiled at strangers like it mattered. Because to him, it did. Fame never made him untouchable. In fact, it made him even more intentional. He knew visibility came with responsibility, and he carried it gently. Fame wasn't the goal. Visibility was. He wanted to show that being soft didn't mean being invisible, that kindness could be power. By 2018, casting directors said, "We need someone like him." Not flashy, just steady, honest, real. He took roles that reflected those values, supported queer projects, and spoke publicly about empathy, gender, and mental health, long before it was trending. He didn't chase virality, he built value. In interviews, he talked about self-worth, healing, and how LGBTQ+ teens deserved stories that didn't end in tragedy. He wasn't just in the spotlight, he was reshaping it. But the most important part of his story wasn't the career. It was what he built with it. Not just status, but space. Not just fans, but connection. And behind all that charm was a secret waiting to unfold, a truth wrapped in pastel macarons, long-distance texts, and the softest kind of courage. Because Newyear wasn't just rising, he was about to fall. In love, and this love would become more defining than any spotlight ever could. Because sometimes, the most powerful roles we play aren't on screen, they're in someone's heart. In a world where fame often rises from drama or raw charisma, Newyear chose another route, one paved with quiet consistency, sincerity, and deep emotional intelligence. After already becoming a high school standout, he stepped into Chulalongkorn University, Thailand's most prestigious campus, not to boost his resume, but to study psychology. He wasn't chasing recognition, he was chasing understanding. He wanted to know what made people freeze when they were afraid, what made them laugh through pain, what made someone feel seen, really seen. And while he studied human behavior in class, he explored human emotion on stage, hosting student events, appearing on university TV, modeling on the side. Little by little, his name outgrew the classroom. His face began appearing not just on flyers around campus, but on screens across Bangkok. Without controversy, without theatrics, he stayed soft, and people remembered him, not because he demanded attention, but because he gave it. By 2015, Newyear had fully stepped into Thailand's entertainment scene. He hosted talk shows, fronted fashion campaigns, appeared on red carpets, and emceed events from brand launches to cultural festivals. Whether he was introducing celebrities or narrating a touching segment, his delivery was always the same: calm, grounded, warm. The kind of presence that made people lean in. Audiences trusted him. Brands respected him. And behind all that ease was relentless preparation, writing, rewriting, researching, rehearsing. But the moment that truly redefined his voice came in 2017, when he and his longtime partner both launched a YouTube channel together. Not for fame, not for clicks, but to share something rare, a love that wasn't hidden. Their content didn't chase virality, it invited vulnerability. It was soft, slow, and deeply human. They cooked together, cried together, laughed over travel fails, answered fan questions, reacted to music videos, and sat in front of a camera talking about what it meant to love without apology. They didn't act, they didn't script, they simply showed up as themselves. And that honesty resonated. Their subscriber count rose fast, but the real impact came from the comments. "You helped me survive this year. I showed my mom your video before I came out. You made me feel normal for the first time." Newyear wasn't trying to be famous. He was trying to be honest. And in a world full of curated perfection, his truth felt like oxygen. He created something bigger than content. He created a space to exhale. The impact only grew. He was invited onto national talk shows, nominated for major media awards, signed by some of Thailand's biggest lifestyle and fashion brands. Yet through it all, he remained himself. No gimmicks, no louder-than-life persona, just a quiet confidence that, ironically, echoed louder than the rest. He never once called himself an activist, but in a country where LGBTQ+ figures are often muted or edited out entirely, Newyear's presence alone was political. He didn't fight the system, he lived beyond it. He didn't hold up a banner, he was the message that you can be soft and strong, out and respected, kind and still unforgettable. Whether he was sitting on a panel, walking a red carpet, or leading a brand campaign, one thing remained unchanged: his authenticity. He was still the same boy who once sketched faces quietly in the back of the classroom. Now he was helping thousands of young people sketch themselves into a story they could believe in. Most celebrities build fences around their fame, but Newyear built bridges between fans and brands, between public image and private identity, between those who feel too much and those who feel like they're too much. And in doing so, he didn't just create media, he created meaning. In an industry overflowing with noise and imitation, Newyear stood apart, not because he was the loudest, but because he was the most real. And maybe the reason his voice carried so far was because it wasn't just a performance. It was rooted in something deeper, something slower, something sacred. Behind every upload, every polished campaign, every meaningful pause was a love that had grown quietly behind the scenes. A love that didn't demand attention, a love that didn't shout, but somehow still said everything. Fame didn't change Newyear, it clarified him. The bigger his platform grew, the more grounded he became. While others chased trends and viral moments, Newyear stayed focused on what mattered: truth, connection, and meaning. He didn't perform a version of himself. He showed up fully, gently as he was, smart, soft-spoken, and endlessly sincere. By the late 2010s, he wasn't just known, he was trusted. A voice people leaned on, a presence that made millions feel like he was speaking just to them. And through it all, there was both. Their love didn't unfold through headlines or hashtags. It grew in the quiet, off-camera, off-script, and deeply real. At public events, Both was often close by but just out of frame, waiting after tapings, holding a coffee, cheering from the wings. No grand declarations, just a rhythm. Just devotion. In interviews, Newyear stayed private, not out of shame, but out of respect. Love to him wasn't a press release. It was a daily act, quiet, faithful, sacred. And in a world that wanted every moment documented, he chose to protect the moments that mattered most. Their YouTube content spoke louder than any headline ever could. From pancake disasters to late-night reflections, their videos revealed something rare. A love that didn't try to impress, just to endure. They laughed at small things. They held space for hard conversations. They got irritated. They apologized. They folded towels differently and argued about it. And yet, through it all, they showed viewers the kind of queer love that didn't need to be flawless. It just needed to be real. Even as his star rose, Newyear stayed rooted. He could have become a brand, but he stayed a person. He didn't place fame above his relationships. He walked beside it. And then came June 2024, Thailand, After years of protest, heartbreak, and hope, finally legalized same-sex marriage. The streets bloomed in rainbow. Couples embraced in public without fear. It was more than a policy shift, it was a cultural reset. For Newyear, who had spent years creating space for others to feel seen, it felt like something deeply personal, a long-awaited promise fulfilled. Days later, both proposed, not with flashbulbs or fanfare, just a quiet seaside evening, friends nearby, a soft breeze, no script, just heart. Newyear's answer wasn't dramatic, it was devastatingly beautiful. I've already said yes since the first day we met. That single sentence lit up the country. The caption went viral, but more importantly, it went deep. TV anchors cried, fans celebrated, families talked. Because in that moment, queer love wasn't just accepted, it was honored. But even as headlines exploded, Newyear stayed focused, not on the world's attention, but on the man in front of him. The same man he once nervously messaged about pastel macarons. The same man who'd walked into a school festival and with a single glance, shifted the course of his life. While the world looked at him, he never stopped looking at both. After 12 years, their story had become more than personal. It had become universal. A beacon for anyone who ever wondered, will I get to love like that? And Newyear didn't try to prove love was possible. He simply lived it, openly, gently, unapologetically. Because in the end, his greatest success wasn't being a host, a model, or a media figure. It was being someone who showed the world that being exactly who you are and loving exactly who you love is already enough to change everything. Why is it that love between two people of the same gender is still seen by some as something to be ashamed of? Love is love. Identity is natural. We weren't born to fit someone else's mold. We were born to feel, to connect, to be seen. And Newyear reminded us, through every quiet act, every video, every moment, that you don't need permission to be who you are. Because in the end, his greatest success wasn't being a host, a model, or a media figure. It was being someone who showed the world that being exactly who you are and loving exactly who you love is already enough to change everything. Newyear never set out to build a fairy tale. What he built with Both was something more grounded and more real. It wasn't built on picture-perfect moments. It was built on presence, on choosing each other through college stress, early careers, sleepy Sunday mornings, and viral highs. While other couples turned love into content, Newyear simply lived it. In the quiet, in the daily, in the deeply human. Fully, softly, unapologetically. For 12 years, Both was more than a co-host. He was the steady hand behind every smile, the quiet glance behind every camera. Their love didn't perform. It pulsed, it held, it whispered rather than shouted. And in a media culture where queer love was either sensationalized or erased, what they offered was revolutionary. A glimpse of same-sex love that wasn't just visible, it was ordinary. And that in itself was a radical act. That's what made the proposal so unforgettable. When Thailand became the first Southeast Asian country to legalize same-sex marriage in June 20th of 24, the nation exploded in joy. But Newyear didn't celebrate with spectacle. He celebrated with stillness, a tear, a smile, a soft yes. On a beach with close friends, Both proposed. And Newyear answered with a line that stopped time. I've already said yes since the first day we met. That moment cracked something wide open. Not just online, but in real life. The video went viral, yes, but the ripple was deeper. Young queer teens dared to dream. Older couples who had waited decades quietly cried in their kitchens. Parents who didn't understand paused to listen. For one fragile moment, the country caught up to the courage of its people. It wasn't just a proposal, it was permission. But even great love stories have turning points. And in early 2025, Newyear announced their separation. No scandal, no headlines filled with blame, just honesty. Two people who had loved well, grown fully, and were now growing apart. His words were heavy but full of grace. Some loves don't end, they evolve. Thank you for 12 of the best years I've ever known. The internet mourned. Fans, strangers, even public figures shared stories of their own breakups, of loss, of love, of learning to begin again. And in the eye of that storm stood Newyear, still showing up, still speaking softly. He kept working, but something in him had shifted. His eyes were a little more tender, his silences carried weight. You could see it, the ache, but you could also see the courage. That's what set him apart. He didn't edit the pain. He didn't bury the past. He let people witness the vulnerability. And in doing so, he offered something even rarer than a happy ending: healing. He reminded his audience that queer love is not immune to heartbreak, but that doesn't make it less sacred. 12 years of showing up for each other still mattered, even if in the end, they chose to walk separately. Out of heartbreak, Newyear created something beautiful. He turned the end of one chapter into a mirror for others, to grieve, to reflect, to grow. He reminded us that being queer isn't just about joy and pride, it's about complexity, depth, showing up with your whole self, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Because even in 2025, queer love is still questioned, still misunderstood, still too often treated like something temporary or taboo. We weren't born to fit into someone else's mold. We were born to feel, to connect, to be seen. And through it all, Newyear never let shame win. He didn't hide. He stood up, not as an icon, but as a man who loved deeply, lost openly, and still believed in love. Fiercely, quietly, completely. To the queer kids who grew up watching, thinking, maybe one day that could be me. To the couples who now walk hand in hand with a little more ease. To the ones still hiding, still hurting, still hoping. Newyear's story isn't a tragedy, it's a tribute. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is say goodbye to the love of your life and still believe in love. And that's exactly what he taught us to do. Newyear Kitiwhut is more than a celebrity. He is a reminder that you don't have to be loud to be brave, that you don't have to be perfect to be real, and that love, even when it ends, still matters. He didn't just live in the spotlight, he brought light with him. And somewhere out there, another boy is watching and whispering to himself, if he could love like that, maybe I can too. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you that love is worth remembering, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel.